fire chief, I'll call out your name. Pat. Hey, Pat. Hey, Pat. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to do that and to connect in that way. And I personally can feel the energy in the room shift. So thank you for being willing to go there. We're going to move right along because we have a tight schedule today, but I want everybody just to hold on to that feeling that we just captured. I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Dr. Giuliano Khalil is here with us today. He's a senior research fellow at the Center for the Blue Economy. He's an adjunct professor at Middlebury Institute of International Studies in Monterey. He's also the founder of Virtual Planet Technologies. His work is motivated by the urgent need to reduce climate change impacts by adopting equitable adaptation strategies. He's currently designing and implementing innovative education and outreach tools to visualize coastal impacts and solutions using virtual reality. You'll hear more about that in his talk, and you'll be able to play with it today at lunch during the tool session. Giuliano has published studies in California, Florida, Latin America, the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Mid-Atlantic. And I'd love for you to join me in welcoming Dr. Giuliano Khalil here to help us better understand the what and so on.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, everyone. It's good to be here. Okay. Just raise your hand if you can hear me. Adjust. All right, so that's not me. Okay, I'm in the right direction. Okay, so I will actually talk about two topics. They're somewhat related. You bear with me, you see how they relate. But I was asked to also talk a little bit about how we incorporate social vulnerability to the climate adaptation plan in Santa Cruz. So I'm going to start with that for about maybe 5 minutes, and then we're going to talk about the virtual reality and some of the outreach work that we're doing. So just a quick shout out for AGU, the American Geophysics Union. I think this could be relevant to you guys. They have this program called Thriving Earth Exchange. Have you guys anyone heard of this? Maybe one. So this, if you're a coastal community or any community, you can sign up and they pair you up with a scientist to help that community to solve a problem. That's how I got connected with Tiffany Wise West in Santa Cruz. And Ben Preston, who was the director at the RAND Corporation, was kind of in that project as well. The great thing is that there's no cost to the community, so pro bono works. It's a great way to get some question investigated that you're interested on. So we did that, and through that project, the idea was to incorporate socioeconomics and social vulnerability into the climate action plan. So we started by reviewing pre-existing studies. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so we looked at 70 plus studies. And what we found is that given the spatial resolution of the city and the studies, they didn't quite align. So we looked at the social vulnerability index from Suzanne Cutter at South Carolina University. We looked at the Coronavirus screen and some other indices, but they're all at the census tract level. So when you look at a small town like Santa Cruz, you have vulnerable communities, neighborhoods, but they get diluted because they're just next door to a wealthier neighborhood. So you can't really kind of identify some of those changes. So with that, we developed it's moving by itself. All right. Let me go back. All right, this will keep me on time. So we decided for those reasons to develop our own custom vulnerability score, and then we overlaid that with some of the coastal hazards that we had in the city. And the idea was, it was a very simple GIS exercise. Any GIS analyst would be able to replicate this, and our methods I'm happy to share with you. It's on the city's plan. But after many discussions, we kind of came down to these 5 indicators of vulnerability. So we looked at income, elderly population, language, disability, and crime. And right on cue, the map comes up. And if you're familiar with Santa Cruz, you see this is like the Beach Flats neighborhood, so which is one of the most vulnerable, low-income, high-crime areas in the city. People speak English not well or not at all, so it's really came up to the surface. So it's great to see that the index kind of reflected that. And then the next step that we did was to overlay that with some of the hazards. So this is one of the maps that we did, looking at the overlay between the social vulnerability and projected coastal flooding. And you can see that the Beach Flats neighborhood is right in the middle of that convergence. And then the next step we did was to overlay that with other hazards. So we looked at tsunami risk on the left and then fire risk on the right. And one of the things that also we didn't find in any of the studies, or some of them like social vulnerability index for instance, they are calculated based on census data, but it's a pretty complicated statistical analysis and it's really hard to tie that up with a solution. So you really have to dig through the indicators and find. So looking at those 5 indicators that I mentioned, it's easier to see some of the actions. So there's an area that you can see the right where ocean, is there a laser thing on this thing? No? Okay. So there's one neighborhood, Lower Ocean, where we found a high incidence of low-income elderly population with disability. So there's some retirement communities up there, and then the fire department now has them as a first priority if there's an evacuation or if there's something they need to do. We're also looking at, the city's looking at doing reverse 911 calls in Spanish and some other things. But the thing that became clear during that study that we need better ways to visualize some of those things. And I've been doing some research for the last about 2 years. And last month I came across this gem for 2 professors. They interviewed about 1,000 homeowners in Florida. And they showed flood maps to some of them and didn't show to others. And let me read the quote from the paper. So surprisingly, those who had viewed the maps were on average less likely to say they believe that climate change was taking place than those who had not seen the maps. And regardless of political affiliation, the majority of homeowners denied that there was a risk to their property value. It's pretty shocking, right? So we're kind of tapping into that. Can virtual reality, the way we frame some of these issues, help solve this problem? And so why virtual reality? There's emerging research showing that it promotes pro-social behavior change and also preparation for natural disasters. So there was a study in 2013 in the Netherlands by 2 Dutch scientists that showed that folks that experienced flooding in 3D declared a higher intent to evacuate from flood-prone areas and to purchase flood insurance. And it wasn't even VR, it was just a 3D on a screen. It was like you're on a video game. You could control a character, go to a house, and then this flood structure will break, and you see the waters rushing in. So we're partnering with a group in Stanford. They have it's called the Virtual Human Interactions Lab. So we're going to replicate our study using one of our tools, and also we're adding this question: would people even declare a higher intent to relocate from the coast permanently if they see some of this impact and solutions using virtual reality versus just a regular 2D map? So I'm going to talk about 2 projects that we're working on currently. There's a third one. I won't have time to go into that, but after the lunch or during the break, we'll have the tools there. You can choose your location. So here's Santa Cruz, the iconic West Cliff Drive. So the city is working on a project there to look at the impacts of sea level rise into the transportation corridor. And you can see already, some armoring is installed, a lot of there. This is there's another project in Santa Cruz. We're updating local coastal program, and with a focus on moving on the beaches, so coastal access to the beach. And in that photo, I wanted to show. Let's see if we can show you real quick. But you can see the high tide. I was out there during the king tides last year. You can see the high tide that day got all the way to the boardwalk. It was like maybe 10 feet away from the little seawall that we're at. And that's a wide beach there. So this is to show how we develop some of this tools. So we fly drones in this search grid pattern. We create what's called a point cloud. We densify it, make more points to the cloud, create a 3D model, and then we project some of the photos into the model to show like a nice texture. And then these models, this is one example. This is one of the first ones we did. This is Cowell Beach. And what you're seeing here is the 2.4 feet of sea level rise combined with an extreme storm, with a 100-year storm in that area. So we, from our colleagues in Stanford, we also learned they have these experiences where you can move around. You have the goggles, but you interact with the room and you can pick things up. And they found that folks that move more inside these experiences, they retain more knowledge and they learn more. So it's based on that, we designed this tool in a way that's interactive, so you get to choose the location, you can interact with the, so in this case you have like a laser point, and you can choose the location on the left, you can raise the sea levels and see what the impacts are. So having that agency and kind of control over the experience, we find that's been very helpful. We also have other features. This is fully narrated. In Santa Cruz, we got Gary Griggs to do the English version, and we got environmental justice advocate, Ernestina Saldaña, to do the Spanish version. There's a built-in survey, and there are other features that are available as well. One that gets a lot of attention is the aerial view. So you get transported to a virtual blimp. You kind of fly above the city, and this is from the drone footage is going to translate it to the tool now. And again, here you can slide the bar and look at some of these projections. And one of the things that we've also learned through some of the research is that in VR, it kind of tricks your brain in a way, even though you know you're at the library, you're seeing someplace and looking at this. But if you're a little afraid of heights, physiologically your body reacts as if you were flying on a blimp. So they did functional MRI studies and found that VR activates part of your brain that are activated when you're seeing the real thing. So it's really immersive, and it kind of incites responses very similar to what you would by seeing the real thing. And so the City of Santa Cruz has been using this tool at the public library. It's been up there for about 3 months now. They had 4 headsets. And here's Tiffany Wise-West from the City of Santa Cruz. Charles is here too. And so they had the goggles there. People could just walk in, check them out, and then go through the experience. And over 240 people did that. So that's another thing that we found that's great. We're reaching out to a completely different audience that you don't typically meet in discussions like that. And then we had this post-experience, like a mini survey that we asked them. And we just say, hey, rate your awareness of sea level rise, how it's changed as a result of the experience from 1 to 4. What do you like about it, and what else would you like to learn more? And about 77% of the people that responded to the survey rated their awareness increase as 3 or 4. So it's pretty significant. And we collected some of their quotes that they wrote on the papers. So having the control of the oceans rising makes it visceral. I studied sea level rise, but it really made it a reality. It's not just words anymore. I was relatively aware, but having the point of view visuals was very impactful. 3D experience much more powerful than photos. And then this drives real reality home, even though it's not real, right? So that it feels real, but it's a projection. And so that's kind of another important thing, is that the tool is great, but the technology it should just be used as an aid to an existing process. So it's very important to have someone that you can talk to. On that note, tomorrow, if you haven't had enough today, head to Santa Cruz tomorrow. We're going to have a community event. It's going to be from 3 to 8, where the whole team that's working on those 2 projects will be there, and then we can talk about that. Yeah, I'm going to be done very quickly. But we can talk, maybe take a question or 2. So another project that we're working on is in Long Beach, and the idea, this is the peninsula in Long Beach, the goal of that project is to have a discussion with local residents in the community to see how can we keep people in place and businesses in place for as long as possible until if and when, it's really when, we have to relocate them. How can we make that transition the least traumatic and financially impactful to the community? And here you can see with a little 0.8 feet of sea level rise, some parts of the peninsula already flooded. And we're using this Project Cosmos data from that region. Play that again. Oh, maybe not. No, I won't play that again. So this is an example of a 3D model that we developed for the region. And one of the things that kind of became clear here is that, and you can see that on static 2D maps, is that the waters, they rise from the bayside before they get to the top. I'm going to keep fighting this thing. So when you run the animation, you see it comes from the back. So even if you decide to do some sort of adaptation here, like build a seawall, or you can see they build this burrow in the winter, they're pretty tall. But with sea level rise, the water's coming from the back, so that won't make any difference. So we're having these community meetings and outreach discussions. So you can see here in the center, like the residents, Elisa is here too, from the Nature Conservancy, who's working with us on that project. This is Jerry Schubel, the president of the Aquarium of the Pacific. Has been like a very great person to have on the project, because having that strong community leader, someone that they respect, it really makes a difference. So here's some of the things that we've learned through this project. That VR users, they have much stronger reactions when they see the tools, and some of you guys will be able to experience that. But they also have a bigger desire to continue the conversation. So no one does, like most people that do it, they ask a lot of questions, and we have great conversations afterward. As I mentioned, it attracts and engages a diverse audience. Costs are finally low enough that this could be implemented widely. It got to the point where it costs the same as building a website, basically. And the other key thing is make sure to include solutions, because we really don't want to scare people into action. That just does not work. You really want to inspire and end up on that note, say, hey, yeah, this is a problem. We're going to talk about it, and this is how you can get engaged, or how we can move on to the next steps. Some of the other things that are coming up for us. One is that we're now going to incorporate some of the solutions. Right now, there are sketches or drawings. We're going to include those into the 3D model, so you'll be able to see what it looks like. We're working with the town of Paradise and the Nature Conservancy to develop a wildfire virtual reality experience, where you're going to be able to see a 3D map of the whole region. We're going to replicate kind of the extent of the campfire and look at what would the benefit of having open space buffers be to future fires. We're also looking at, you'll be able to click on different areas of the map and learn about the impacts from the fire in other communities. One of the things that we don't hear very much is that they had a huge issue with water quality since the fires, and that doesn't necessarily make the news, so we'll be able to learn some of that. We're also applied for a grant to work with Portland in Oregon to look at this idea of cascading events. And the idea there is to look at earthquakes, fires, and mudslides. So what would be the impacts of that more likely? So we're going to have specialists like in each one of those areas, looking at how they intersect, but more importantly, what kind of adaptation or preparation action can we take that could benefit all the, or reduce risks from all these three things combined. And I think now we're good. Yeah, and then if you want to learn more, if you take a picture of that QR code, there's a PDF that comes up, but I'll be able to also share with everyone. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Juliano. I promise I wasn't advancing his slides. I don't know how that was happening, but we were right on time. Thank you. We would like to invite additional voices to the conversation now. I think oftentimes we get to hear from the experts in the room, the scientists, the people who study the problem, but we don't necessarily get to hear from the front lines as much. And we wanted to be sure to bring voices, local leaders to the table who could speak to their direct experience of, if not sea level rise, yes, sea level rise in some cases, but similar events. And our last Resilience Roundtable was on wildfire in November, and many of us gathered. I think we're about, not quite half of you were here for the first one, and about half, a little bit more than half, are new to this series this time. But we gathered last time, and with a focus on wildfire and smoke, and we spoke quite a bit about, of course, the Thomas Fire and the one-time debris flow. Having just lived through that, we have the experience of something analogous to a lot of the events and the imagery that we've seen on screen. The kind of coastal disruption, the kind of impact to our beaches, impact to our coastal communities, disruption of our transportation corridors. So having just been through all of that, we collectively as a community have a lot of experience to draw on. So we've invited 3 local leaders to stand up and offer some perspective. We asked them to share a little bit about their experience and observations from an event like this, or multiple events, how through the experience, what the implications are, so some of that, so what, and then perhaps most importantly, what they did and what the people they work with and the people they serve did to adapt and move through the event. I'd like to begin with Ernesto Paredes. He's the executive director of Easy Lift. Ernesto, Sharon will bring you a microphone. Actually, you can speak from there if you like. He was just recently Santa Barbara Foundation's 75th Man of the Year. I want to point that out. He served with Future Leaders of America, Samson Diabetes Research Institute. He's currently a trustee of the Santa Barbara Foundation in addition to his central role as leader of one of our community's most important organizations serving vulnerable populations.
Well, thank you very much. You're second to my mother in being able to introduce me, so thank you very much. I appreciate it. Again, my name is Ernesto Paredes, and I've been lucky enough to grow up here on the South Coast. I just actually grew up off of Patterson, and I remember riding my bike along the bike path and going to the beach and spending the day. This is the day when you would have to run across the hot sand to get to the water because the beach was pretty significant. Now you go there and it's incredible that the beach is gone. And I don't know, again, as a lay person, I just kind of accept the fact that people say, well, the tides are changing, so well, that's all I go to the next beach, I suppose. But it's interesting to see that go as a kid, as a child, and then fast forward to where we are today. So as the executive director of Easy Lift Transportation, our offices are right in the bay, right there on the airport property. And we're probably a stone's throw away from the airport tower. That's how how to get to our offices. And so we've been there on that site. We used to get the West Side Community Center in downtown Santa Barbara. But as our fleet expanded, we shifted to where we are now, which is almost 20 years ago. In those 20 years, our offices have flooded three times. Significant, each time a little bit more, where it'd be at least ankle high in our offices, then it got to be knee high. This last time, a couple of years ago, we had to actually leave our offices and shift to a different location. Still on the airport property, they were great to work with, but it was a little bit higher ground than where our offices are now. And we were there, it's only temporarily for a few months. We were there over a year until they were able to clean up all the water that got into the walls. Now, during that time, the flooding, we were fortunate because most of our vehicles aren't kept on site because we anticipate things like this are going to happen. So we spread out our fleet from North Lida to Carpinteria and points in between. We'll strategically have some of our vehicles. In addition, we were able to leave our offices and work remotely. We actually took up camp in a booth at the old Elephant Bar. We started dispatching right there. As appetizers were coming in, we were dispatching, so it's going really well. But that's been our new reality. And now what's going on with the happened last year with the mudslides. Again, our community, they were saying the roads were cut off. Well, because of our strategy of having vehicles, we had people in Carpinteria that needed to get the dialysis treatments in downtown Santa Barbara. Now, you can't mess with dialysis. Dialysis truly is life or death. But because we had vehicles, we were able to dispatch those vehicles down to Ventura and Oxnard to those facilities, and they would work really well. Until the CHP, again, local CHPs, incredible. And then working with them also, be able to eventually escort us to a lot of these individuals. We were talking about a lot of people in retirement homes. A lot of them, unfortunately, cannot readily get into a regular vehicle. So vehicles like ours become even more important. We're part of an organization called VOAD locally, Voluntary Organizations Active in Disasters. Thank you. And so that's been really helpful to work with them because, again, having been my whole career in the South Coast, seeing all the different natural disasters, what I can say today is we are much more willing to communicate and work together than ever before. I'm still convinced, for me, the stories I shared, those are easy to sell to all the science that I'm hearing now. What concerns me is this is going to take a community and a nation. This is talking a big commitment. And I was kind of joking with Luke here recently, just earlier, and I said, you know, until there is a NASCAR track that's flooded over, Little America's not going to get it. So we're going to figure out how to convince you that. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Next, I'd like to introduce Ksenia Big-Pau-Sas. She is a local leader here with the United Domestic Workers of America, and she's also Vice President of the Central Coast Labor Council. And I guess about, 75 divided by half is almost exactly right. She's the 37th district, our 37th district legislative district Woman of the Year from this past year, March 2019. We have some very esteemed speakers today. And she, I'm really awfully grateful that you're here and you made time to come today, Ksenia. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. I think it's a very important discussion for everybody, like was said, across the country, but I'm a resident of Santa Barbara County, and I wasn't raised in Santa Barbara County. I came from the Inland Empire, and I didn't grow up around the ocean. I live up in Santa Maria, so I'm not so close to the ocean, but I do represent thousands of workers throughout the state that have been affected by recent natural disasters, and particularly here in Santa Barbara County, what happened in the last couple of years affected us a lot. So I wanted to share a little bit about that and how it went for us. I'm also a part of the Workforce Development Board in Santa Barbara County, and I happen to know hospitality and healthcare, main sources of employment in this county. And I couldn't help to think of all the workers that would be affected if we have a flood all of a sudden, just like when we had fire, just like when we had mudslides. And I wanted to, like I said, share what happened to us and what I'm thinking could happen if it happens again, or if the flooding happens all of a sudden. We represent low-income workers, minimum wage workers. And when you are earning minimum wage, especially in a county with such high cost of living, and you're managing to even live in South County, you don't have any disposable income. It was mentioned about what transportation had to overcome to deal with the elderly and disabled, to get to dialysis during the mudslides. The County of Santa Barbara did an amazing job at taking care of those folks. What we learned is that the people, the caretakers that helped to get those people to dialysis, that were working and then the next day not working because a lot of those folks had to be sent to temporary housing, lost their income from one day to the other. And like I said, when you're making minimum wage and you're barely making it, that's a disaster. We had to come in as a union. We joined with the other unions to help folks that were going through those emergencies. But we also represent people, IHSS workers up in Butte County. So the Paradise Fires were mentioned earlier. And we literally had to go change the laws at the state on an emergency basis. Like, we had to go talk to the Department of Social Services, because the in-home, for those of you that are not familiar with the in-home support service program, it's a state-funded program managed by the county, and it specifically says that it's for the home. You have to live in the home. So when people are displaced from their home, they don't qualify for the program. And so when they were in a shelter, our workers weren't getting paid, but they were working because they couldn't leave their client, in their most vulnerable time, alone. So months went by without these folks getting income, and I worry about future emergencies and being prepared for those. And expanding to all the other workers that depend on their income, just like all of us. I think about the hotels that are by the beach. I think about the restaurants. I think about people that clean houses. of the folks that live by the beach. And what's gonna happen, we need to think of the workforce of tomorrow, how those jobs are going to perhaps go away or be relocated. And when you are a low-income worker, you don't have the income to relocate. So I would offer, let's think about coming up with allocated funds to help them relocate and to supplement their income in times of disaster, just like we do for folks that are receiving social services already, but then folks that are working for them or working for businesses. Businesses have other types of resources to deal with emergency, government agencies, or community groups have the resources, but let's think of the workers that often don't have that.
And now I'd like to welcome Monique Myers. Monique is our Santa Barbara Sea Grant Program Extension Specialist. She's affiliated with UC San Diego Scripps Institute of Oceanography, and she is responsible for a lot of the citizen science and the photos that we saw in many of these presentations. Thank you, Monique.
Thank you. And if anybody wants to become a citizen science, I cannot help but, since I've seen Erin's picture in the background there, that we have a great program if you want to do something to address climate change here in Santa Barbara. But so I'm speaking a little bit for the animal side of things.
Closer.
Sorry, I'm speaking a little bit for the animal side of things here. And when they asked me to think of an event, I thought of the 2015-16 El Nino. And when that happened, I took a drive from Carpinteria to UCSB and looked at the beaches and the wetlands. And, during that time, we had about 5 to 6 inches of sea level rise. And you saw the projections that we have for the future. So in about 10 years, we're going to have more than that. And it just really gave a window to the future. And so as I drove down and looked at the beaches that are backed by bluffs, which is a lot of our coastline, which is where I live, there was no sandy beach left. There was no dry beach at all. And you looked at Butterfly Beach, and that's a sea wall. And there was also, no dry sand left on that beach. And just beaches like East Beach that are really wide had dry sand. And now these dry sand areas are super important for all of us, right? And for the animals as well as the people, because for the animals, right, this is their habitat. They have nowhere else to go, and it is the most biodiverse part of the beach. And I'm sitting at a table with Dave Hubbard and Jenny Dugan, who are, the masters of this research. But so that's where the most biodiversity is, the upper beach, both for wetlands and for beaches. And so as we lose that dry sand on the beach, we're losing the place for the greatest biodiversity. And then for us, right, when you go to the beach, you want a little bit of dry sand. That's where you put your towel. That's where you play beach volleyball, right? And so as we look towards the future, towards 2030, when we have 8 inches of sea level rise, towards 2050, when we have a foot, so twice as much as we all saw in 2015-16 during that 6-month period of El Nino, we're going to have a really different place for both people and the people who come from inland, where it's hot, for them to come to the beach and cool off, and for the critters who live there and have nowhere else to go. And so, this is what I was thinking about during that 2015-16 El Nino, about the future and what it's looking like. And then, of course, 2100, when we have 3 feet or more sea level rise. So I really think that I wanted to have a bright spot of this whole thing, because I was recently in Kiribati, where they've experienced more sea level rise, and they don't have the options, but we have so many options here, to do something, that we can take a map and look at where we have wide beaches, look at where things can move inland, and that we have really a lot of opportunities that we can allow our beaches and our wetlands to live and progress inland, right? We can restore our beaches, allow more sand, so we have natural sand dunes, which then protect our coastlines as well, much better than seawalls, which destroy our beaches, as we've already seen. And so I wanted to really end on that bright note, that we have a lot of challenges facing us with how our beach ecosystems and our beach-loving public. You know, we are the originators of beach culture here in Southern California, and we're looking at losing that, the whole basis of it. So I wanted to add the bright note that there's really a lot we can do moving forward.
Thank you, Monique. Thank you all for bringing your deep experience and wisdom and voices to the conversation. We are actually right on time. I'm happy to report. We're gonna, in just a moment, we're gonna have a coffee break from 10 o'clock till 10:20. I'll give you, from up here, we'll give you a warning as it's getting closer to 10:20 and invite you to come back to your seat. We'd love to start on time. We have a full remainder of the program. As Monique alluded to, we've been spending the morning again, as Carrie said, with the what, getting clearer about the facts, the reality, the observations, what we know about sea level rise and its impacts, sea level rise and storm events in particular. With the so what, we're beginning to draw those conclusions and see the implications. And in the rest of the time, we're going to move much more actively into the now what. The what do we need to do? How do we come together? How do we build resilience? So I'd love for you all, just over the break, continue these conversations, reconnect with someone you know well, find somebody you don't know, build a new connection. Because remember, this is our team. This is the community. We're missing some people, undoubtedly. There are people not in the room, and we're going to have to build this team. But this is a big part of our team that's going to come together around this. So if you don't know someone, seek them out and make a new connection. Great. We'll invite you back at 10:20. If you want to lead an unconference session, we'll post a note next to Carrie over here and come and check out her mural in process that's capturing the program. Thank you.